All right, welcome in, guys. It is another episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. It is a Thursday morning here. Appreciate you guys waking up with me. We have done 4 days in a row of podcasts. There's been a lot of news, a lot of things to react to this week. I was going to do just keep it 3 days in a row and then do the Red Friday live chat. But I said, we'll do 4 days of podcasting consecutively, only because we're going to have this guy on the podcast. Very excited to have on former Kansas City Chiefs offensive tackle and the best tackle eligible receiver in NFL history. Ladies and gentlemen, back here on the podcast, Joe Valerio. Joe, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been a while. How have you been, sir?
Oh my gosh, Farzine, it's great to be with you and to be with everybody this morning. And I'm super excited to be back for this season. I mean, God, it's, it always seems like so long, between the seasons. And the next thing you know, it's upon us and we're already 2 games in, it just goes so fast once it gets here. It's like a roller coaster going downhill. And it's been a wild season so far. I mean, the ups and downs that you see some teams having, and including our beloved Chiefs. I mean, it's been a very interesting 2 weeks. Which, by the way, Farzine, there was a chance that the Chiefs, and I don't mean any offense by this. There was a possibility that this team could have been 0-2 going into this third game. Not because the Chiefs are bad. It's just that September is such a rough. It's such a rough part of the season for every team because they don't have training camp anymore.
See, that's interesting because I feel like that was the big talking point with Cincinnati, is that they don't really do much in training camp. Like, what do you make of that? The way teams handle practices in training camp nowadays, especially like trying to get ready for a season.
Well, number one, I'm going to give the Chiefs a lot of credit for the way Andy does handle it. But look, I don't want to sound like one of those ex-players, pulls out the leather helmet and I walk to school uphill both ways in the snow. Like, I'm not one of those ex-players, but I do have to admit, and I think anybody who played in that era or followed the team in that era and took the 7-hour ride up to River Falls, Wisconsin, would say, oh my God, training camp for the Kansas City Chiefs was like, we used to say Marty time equals Lombardi time, because we worked. I mean, my rookie year, we went 13 days in a row of full pad 2-a-days with a special teams walkthrough at night. So by the time the season came around, Farzine, we were like, I already felt like I played a season and we didn't even start. But so today, the way that it is, and I totally get it. I'm not begrudging it or belittling it. You got to keep these players healthy because you've got 20% of your players making 80% of the money, right?
Yeah.
Just caponomics. So you got to keep guys healthy. You need them for the whole season. It's a longer season. And I'm glad they put those rules in for the players, the never 2 days in a row of practice, of pads, only 1 practice a day, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can call it what you want. You can call it a country club training camp, but teams, it's a much different training camp. Now, with that said, the Chiefs, Andy Reid, he pushes things to the limit. He works that team. The high energy practices, they will get after it from time to time. And I think it's showing right now in what's happened, the way they handled the Ravens and the way that they handled the Bengals. Now, the Bengals are starting to rise back up now. We saw that the team they were in week 1 was not even close to the team they were in week 2. Yeah. So they're getting their sea legs under them. But it's football is a game of muscle memory and conditioning and physical conditioning. And what I mean by that is, getting used to being hit and being able to go 60, 70 plays in a game. You need that. And I think Andy does one of the best jobs, if not the best job, of getting a team ready to play. And I think it's why they start a little faster than other teams.
Joe Valerio here with me. You can check out more of his commentary over on his podcast, the Believe in Chiefs podcast, one of the co-hosts there, along with Jeff Fedotin. I did want to get your reaction to the Kareem Hunt signing. 6 years ago, everyone knows what happened. The video surfaced and the Chiefs were really disappointed. It seemed like the Hunt family, they were really kind of just embarrassed by this, especially because they stood behind him. So the notion was that he's never, ever going to come back to Kansas City. Never say never. I want to get your idea, like what this means from a football standpoint, especially given his age. But from the whole situation, what happened? What do you make of the Chiefs choosing to go back out and bring him back, given their situation at the running back spot, and wanted to give him a second chance?
Yeah, I mean, look, I tip my hat to Clark Hunt and the Hunt family for, seeing how a player can change. I mean, we saw things happen, some of the bad publicity that guys like Michael Vick got, and then, gets that second chance. People make mistakes. They do bad things. Things happen. And I think the Chiefs, if there's an organization that could look through some of that, and look, the Chiefs we all know they have not been without their problems and some of the character issues, but it seems like the entire NFL deals with it from time to time, just based on the situation that happens with players and the money and different social factors that come into play. Social media doesn't help, and so the Hunt family is just they see. I think they just see the good in people, and I feel like Andy Reid, put out some statements that say, look, the guy changed his ways. He's rectified some things in his life, and the Chiefs are about giving people second chances and seeing if they can make the best of it. And look, it's some of the stuff that players do. Some of it's unforgivable, some of it's not. And, I think the Chiefs are just making a decision based on what they need right now to keep this thing going. Because from what I see, Farzine, I'm not 100% sure that Isaiah Pacheco is going to be back. If he gets that surgery and that all goes down the way that you keep reading about, it could be pretty disastrous from a running back perspective. I think having Samaje Perine is I think that's a really good. That was a good pickup because I think he can grind it out. I think the guy lifted a car off a person once, saving their life. So he can grind it out. But going out and getting someone like Kareem Hunt, who's a tested veteran, give him a second chance, and who knows what can happen. So I think the Chiefs are looking at this both opportunistically to say, look, he's one of the best players available that fits into our scheme, and he's a guy that we made a decision once, but it's been 6 years, and we think he's changed his ways, and we can give him a second chance, and we'll see if it can rectify itself. And I think we know that if something goes wrong and goes awry, the Chiefs will be the first team to pull the plug.
I saw your tweet during the Chiefs Bengals game shortly after Wanye Morris caught his touchdown pass. You were like, that proud dad that was so excited to see another offensive lineman get that touchdown there. Talk to me what that's like, because listen, you guys are offensive linemen. You guys don't get stats, and even when things are working right, you don't get the glory. You're only talked about when bad things happen, and we'll get into the left tackle situation later on. But no offensive lineman gets the glory. I think Dan Connolly, he had that really cool kick return several years ago. You obviously caught 4 touchdown passes, a couple of them from the great Joe Montana. When you got that play, when Marty Schottenheimer said, "Hey, Joe, we're doing this. Let's go." What's going through your mind as you're lining up and getting ready to wait for the snap and all of that? What are you thinking in that moment?
The genesis of it, Farzine, was actually really interesting because Joe Montana was the ultimate jokester, right? The guy, he loved to have fun. And as serious as he was when it came to game time, and everybody knows what focus he had as a player, he was somebody who really did find a lot of joy in life. And I used to run. I was always the third tight end, tank formation, whatever you want to call it, back in the Marty days. And when we would bring in, because a lot of times we didn't really have 3 tight ends in our roster, so I would come in. It was Jonathan Hayes, and for a while we had Keith Cash. Obviously, he's the H back type. But like if you needed a big bulky guy to come in, I came in as the third tight end. But there was never a thought of me in 1991 or 92 going out for a pass. Now, early in that preseason, we had put in a play where I acted as a screen, where I would go 5 yards into the end zone, and I would basically just be a human pick, right? I would just be a wall. I would stand there, and then would run either a crossing route, or they would try to use me as some kind of a screen or pick. Joe he drops back, and Keith Cash does his out route, Kimball Anders does his crossing route, and it's like, and Joe's like pumping the ball and like looking at me, and I'm like, oh no, oh no, oh no, don't you dare. And he had that Joe Montana smile on his face that was just that boyish smile, and he's looking at me, and I'm like, oh my God, he's going to throw this ball at me, and he heaves it at me. Now Joe didn't have like a cannon, but he still threw well. I mean, he still threw the ball hard. He's a professional quarterback, for crying out loud. He fires this thing at me, thinking, all right, I'm going to get Joe on this one, and I'm going to hit him in the face mask, or maybe he's going to try to get me in the gut and make me double over, right? And I caught the thing, Farzine. I was a catcher in baseball. Like I thought I was actually going to play baseball in college. So I had good hands, and I played basketball, and I was good at receiving the ball on the baseline or whatever as a center or power forward.
Yeah.
I don't know if Joe knew that, and he just thought I was just a big galoot. And I caught the thing, and oh my God, Paul Hackett like throws his keyboard or clipboard up in the air. He comes running over and he goes, "You can catch?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm holding this brown thing that I haven't touched in 20 years." And he's like, he goes, "Joe, mark my words, you're going to catch a touchdown pass this season." And I was like, wow, like this West Coast offense really does open things up when guys like me are scoring. And he put the play in, and he said, because we had this big conversation about Guy McIntyre from the 49ers. And next thing you know, I'm running routes, and it was like, it was crazy. And, we called it on that against the Raiders, that first touchdown I scored in 1993. And, it was Marcus going over the top. The entire defense got suckered in, and there I was wide open. And I'll tell you, Farzine, first of all, you just think, don't drop it. Like it's Joe Montana. Like if I drop this, first of all, Joe's not going to be mad at me because that's just the kind of player he was, but it's Joe Montana. And everything starts happening in slow motion because remember, Farzine, like I just wasn't used to that kind of thing in a game. I mean, I played a lot of pickup football as a kid and whatnot, but in an actual NFL game, I never thought that I would score. And so, when you've gone your whole life only getting your name called on the loudspeaker for holding or face mask or jumping off sides or getting your face plastered when you let up a big sack, it's like you learn to just like live with it, right? That you don't want to get your name called for anything. And to be able to hear that and to like feel the joy that somebody like a Marcus Allen or a wide receiver feels when they score, it's pretty amazing when you've lived your whole life only getting your name called for doing something bad. So that's why I get so joyful when I see linemen score, whatever you want to call it, a big man TD, big man tutty, thick six. Like I love it because it's just, I know the joy that person is feeling. And number one, I also feel the pain of the amount of fines that they're going to get in the locker room, and they're going to be taking a lot of people out for dinner. I treated for a lot of dinner as far as because it was pretty not the norm, and we used to have a fine board, and every time you would get your name in the paper, do different things, you got fined. And I funded a lot of O-line parties and a lot of dinners, paying for those touchdowns. So I do feel that pain too. Wanya's he's gonna feel it, but it was really great to see him do it. His dance was way better than mine too, by the way. Like he the first time I tried to do the cabbage patch when I scored against the Raiders. First of all, my number one person in my life, my wife, was like, "Joe, don't ever do that again." Jen was like, she's like, "Listen, when you get to the end zone, act like you've been there before." I'm like, "Oh, that's exactly what Coach Schottenheimer said." But Coach Schottenheimer we used to laugh about it all the time. He'd be like, "Joe, don't do that." He goes, "Don't do that again." He goes, you're going to score more touchdowns." He goes, "Act like you've been there before, buddy, because that wasn't good. It was not a good cabbage patch, Farzine. Not a good one." I try to delete all those videos from the internet.
Well, and one of those touchdown catches, you got the one and only Eric Stonestreet in the background. And funny enough, he's wearing a green shirt, and he did like a podcast about this. He's like, "I don't even know why I wore a green shirt, but that's just what he had."
He is so funny about that. I mean, I love seeing Eric when I go to Kansas City. We go up to his suite and we see the pictures that I'm up there and he's back there. And what he did, Farzine, is he sent me a direct message on Twitter And I literally thought it was a college buddy. I'm like, all right, so I go, who is this? Who is
Yeah.
this? And he goes, no, Joe, this is Eric Stonestreet. I'm like, come on. I'm like, all right, Pat, Doug, Jeff, is this you? And he's like, no, Joe, this is Eric Stonestreet. He goes, I need to know if you have this picture in your house. So he sends me a copy of the picture. And I said, well, Eric, I don't have a lot of football pictures, around, but I actually do have that picture in a little frame that my wife gave me it's a little football frame, and I had it in my office. And he goes, well, here's the funny thing, Joe. He goes, I'm in that picture. I'm like, what? And he sent me like a blow up of it, and he had like this little circle around it, and he's like, that's me. 20 something year old Eric Stonestreet, in second row of Arrowhead down in the corner of the end zone. And I'm like, wow. He goes, we're gonna have some fun with this. So we did a little Instagram back and forth and made a little skit, and then he goes on obviously at Julian Edelman's podcast and talks more about it. And then he's like, you got to come up to the suite and see this thing. So we've created this really cool friendship out of it. And he's such a gracious host and just such a fan of the team. And it's led us down the path. Now we've had Rob Riggle on the pod. We've had, Eric Stonestreet on the pod. So this whole 90s fan thing is pretty cool. Like to relive some of that stuff. So we got a couple more guys to go now. We got to get Paul Rudd. We got to get Jason Sudeikis. I gotta hook in with these big slick guys and, try to get a little more pub with these guys and flash those 90s, Chiefs, kind of pictures around.
You got to get Taylor Swift also to complete the celebrity fan base.
Well, I've been petitioning to new heights, and I keep saying, look, I'm basically Bizarro Travis Kelce, right? Come on, guys, like let's start a campaign here. All right, so I'm a kid from Philly, right, who played center for the Chiefs. So Jason Kelce was a center, right?
Yeah.
I was a tackle eligible, tight end or whatever, wide receiver, whatever you want to call me, like really wide receiver for the Chiefs who like caught tight touchdowns. And like, I'm like, come on, I'm like Bizarro Travis or Bizarro Jason. Like, come on, you got it. I have a lot of stories I could tell these guys about growing up in Philly, playing in Kansas City, and all that stuff. So I'm still working the angles, trying to get some stories out there with those two guys. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun for sure. I got to ask you about the offensive tackle issues. It's been a really weird, 2 years plus 2 games for this year. You look a couple of years ago when they had Orlando Brown and Andrew Wiley on Pro Football Focus. Those two guys were the two highest when it came to pressures allowed. Obviously, can't have that. Still, you want a Super Bowl with that kind of problem you had. They make a change at both left tackle positions. They bring in Donovan Smith and Jawan Taylor. Jawan Taylor had the penalties, kind of weird when they were picking on him, but still had a lot of those penalties. Donovan Smith was maybe just a small bit better than Orlando Brown. And now you have Kingsley Suamataia, and he's really struggling. He's definitely going through that rookie learning curve. And listen, it's Trey Hendrickson, but I think the Chiefs maybe still expected more out of him from that game. Right now, from Andy Reid's press conference earlier this week, he didn't seem to commit as to who's going to start. What do you make of the whole offensive tackle situation, and how do they fix that moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing that I think the reason why the Chiefs keep winning Super Bowls, even though they're having some struggles, it's Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean, if anything, and I'm not defending anything that is going on the outside, because it is a need, and it is something they have to work on, because it's going to catch up with them if they don't address it. But Patrick Mahomes, it's more important that it's solid in the middle of the pocket for him, so that he can scooch out and either what I call find the pocket within the pocket. When things start to break down on the defensive end side with the tackles, I'm telling you, the guy has like 10 eyes, and the game just happens in slow motion for him. And that's what makes him special, right? He just has a different kind of a vision, and he has a different kind of adaptability to the speed of the game, where it literally things just happen slower for him. Even though guys are running 4.5 40s around the edge, he sees them running 6-second 40s. It's just the way he operates. So they do have that going for them. That's not an excuse for not wanting to protect Patrick Mahomes, who's the biggest asset in the NFL, right? And I think it over time, it's not sustainable. It can get you so far, and I think what they need to do is, continue to protect the inside of the pocket, because that's the most important thing for Patrick. And I think it's the most important thing for most quarterbacks these days. I mean, the days of the statuesque Dan Marino, John Elway, Joe Montana, even to a certain degree, even though he was relatively mobile, like that statuesque quarterback is gone, right? And that's when you really needed the tackles to be like who they were.
Yeah.
Today, you give a Patrick a little bit of a crevice, he's just going to step up in the pocket. And actually, it's almost like he's better when it happens. I don't know. It's kind of bizarre. Like, you got the Lamar Jacksons, the Josh Allens, the Joe Burrows. They're more mobile. They're able to move. I mean, look, just go up and down the NFL, rosters and look at the quarterback. So I know I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, and it's probably why it's not such a glaring thing for the Chiefs. I think for me, the more glaring thing was the Juwan Taylor penalties. Like, come on, Juwan, like hold your water and line up on the center's belt. Like, come on, like what? How hard is that? So I think if anything, that was probably given both Andys, Andy Heck, the offensive line coach, and Andy Reid, and to a certain degree Matt Nagy, that was probably giving them more fits than the bad protection, And it's just hey, listen, Farzine, how if I spitball this conspiracy theory out there? Maybe it's not the tackles. Maybe it's Patrick. Maybe it's the way he sets up in the pocket. Maybe it's the way he moves so quickly that doesn't allow the tackles to get into any kind of a rhythm. Right? Like, I don't know. I'm just spitballing that out there. Maybe it's the interior line. This interior line is too good, right? And they're so solid in the middle that it's making the tackles look not as solid because they're the pressure's coming. And that's a weird conspiracy theory that I'm just kind of thinking up on the fly here, but it's definitely something they need to address. I think teams are getting better at rushing players like Patrick Mahomes. Derek Thomas is one of my all-time favorite people, friends, teammates ever. He had two basic moves, right? Like he had rush as fast as he pin his ears back, rush to the outside, and beat you on a short corner and get the quarterback's arm, which he did hundreds of times. He was a master at it. He also was pretty good at faking the upfield move and then coming underneath. But that was it. Derek was very rarely going to bull rush anybody. And he could if he needed to, but he wasn't going to stick his arm and hand in somebody's chest and push them into the quarterback. The defensive ends today are completely different. They can do it all. They're running 4.5 40s. They're bench pressing the world. They're squatting the world. They're bull rushing you. They're swimming you. They're button rolling you. They're hand slapping you down. So I think the problem may not be the Chiefs. I think it might be a combination of the way that defensive ends rush and the way that Patrick just uses the pocket. He just uses it differently, and maybe it makes it look like, a little bit more pressure's coming. I mean, because it's starting to become like, well, how could it have been like 6 different tackles struggling, right? Like, is that like possible? Like, right? Like Orlando Brown, like, Andrew Wiley like turned into a really good, solid player. Like maybe it wasn't them. Maybe it's something else. And I'm just throwing that little weird theory out there. Not trying to be overprotective of my line buddies, my fools, right? The fraternal order of offensive linemen. But it might be something different than just the talent that they have out there.
Last thing I wanted to ask you, unrelated to the offense, more so special teams, because you were involved with the long snapping unit during your time with the Chiefs. I got to ask you, Harrison Butker, man, it just feels automatic with him every single time. And it's funny because his NFL debut, when the Chiefs claimed him from the Panthers practice squad against Washington, Monday Night Football, he made the game-winning field goal. Now the Chiefs won that, I think, by like 9 or 10 points because they scored on a fumble, off a lateral on the last play. But he still had the game-winning field goal right before that. And he's had more significant game-winning field goals in the AFC Championship game against the Bengals, and then 2 weeks later in Super Bowl 57. A year later, tying the game to send it into overtime. I know it's a chip shot field goal, but man, the amount of pressure on that can be so high, even for a chip shot field goal. And so there is pressure to make that. Otherwise, you lose. What do you make of Harrison Butker coming off another game-winning field goal and just continuing to do the things that he's doing?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's like anything. It's the Scotty Schefflers of golf, the Tiger Woods at his peak. It's no different than something like that. Pitchers who just get into a groove for X amount of years. It's a confidence thing, right? It's a complete and utter muscle memory talent. You have to have talent for it. I'm not saying anybody just because you're mentally tough, you're going to be a good kicker. You have to have all the attributes, right? You have to actually have the physical skills to be able to kick that ball the way that people do. I mean, my leg would fly off if I tried to kick a 20-yard field goal, right? I mean, just tendons, my tendons are just different. So there is a level of talent met with, a physical sort of, some physical attributes that make people good kickers. So once you find that, it really, to me, kicking and all, because I spent a lot of time with kickers over my career and long snapping, and between hanging out with them in meeting rooms and out on the field and doing drills. It's for me, it's all about the confidence level, and it's all about sort of the mojo and sort of the matching the muscle memory along with the physical talents, along with the mental strength that a kicker has to have. It's no different than goalkeepers, right? You just you get the yips, and then all of a sudden it becomes more of a mental thing than it does a physical thing. Like there's no is Harrison Butker any physically better than some of the other kickers that are out in the league? I mean, marginally, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's he's not built differently. He looks to be able to kick the ball pretty much the same as every other kicker. I think his leg is a little bit stronger. But long answer to a short question, Farzine, is I think it really just comes down to having the mental toughness and the mental strength to just block out the distractions, see it for what it is, and be able to stay zoned in longer than anybody else. And that's why he's had the sustainability. I saw that in guys like Nick Lowry. He was focused, man. He just, but other kickers that I saw not do so well, just didn't have that mental toughness, and it just got to them. And it's no different than, like I said, a good pitcher or a great shooter, or a foul shooter, or whatever in basketball. Like it's a lot of it really does come down to that mental toughness.
Joe, how can people connect with you on social media, and how can they check out the Believe in Chiefs podcast?
Yeah, sure. No, thanks, Farzine. Yeah, I'm on social media at Joe Valerio 73, all one word, and you can follow along on X, Twitter. I'm on there, Instagram a little bit more on Twitter than any other social media platform. And our podcast I do with Jeff Bedoten, who's a great sports writer for Forbes magazine. He's also a book editor, a Kansas City native. We've been doing the podcast for Believe now for many years, and it's BLEAV, Believe in Chiefs, and we're on the Believe Podcast Network. So there's tons of different podcasts you can find on the Believe Network, and we happen to be Believe in Chiefs, and we do it every week. We've been doing it every week through the off season. We never miss a week, and we just have a lot of fun, talking. It's a short one. They're usually 25 to 30 minutes, so you're not locking in for too long of a time. We talk about things that are relevant, and we have a little bit of fun. Of course, Farzine, we do talk a lot of O-line play because pretty fun to do that because I got to give those guys the dap. So but it's a lot of fun. But it's great to be with you, Farzine. You do such a great job in promoting Kansas City sports, and I love following you on social media and seeing your travels and travails, and really good stuff, man. You are a fantastic part of the community in Kansas City for sure.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm trying to steal you from Jeff, because this I forgot. I've been meaning to tell you this, because someone on my Facebook page said, I used to think you were a douchebag, but I listened to your podcast with Joe Valerio, and you guys both sound like really nice guys. I'm like, thanks. Maybe I need to make Joe Valerio a permanent co-host. So No one else thinks that about me.
Farzine, I love joining you. I'll join you anytime, man. It's great to be with you. And I apologize for the bad quality of the video. I'm in a hotel room in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, doing some work out here, and it's they finally broke into the double digits for the temperature. It's been in the hundreds for like months out here in the Arizona and California area. So it was a welcome. It was almost like people were wearing sweaters. It was only like 92 out today. I expected to see people in sweatsuits, but yeah. So it's been fun. I love traveling for work and talking about the Chiefs in the various places that I go, and they really are getting a great following around the country, and people are really enjoying watching the team play.
Yes, that is very good to see. I know the Hunt family, they've been talking about that globalization, so it is very cool. Hey, Joe, it's always great talking to you. We've been doing this for a long time. I remember when I discontinued the podcast, I think that was when I started talking to you on my Chiefs podcast. Now I brought it back last year, so it's good to reconnect with you on this podcast again. Thank you so much again for your time. Check out this podcast if you haven't done so already. Believe in Chiefs. Joe, we'll do this again sometime. Appreciate your time.
Look forward to it, Farzine. Have a great one, bud.
All right, thank you. Take care, Joe, and travel safely. That is Joe Valerio, former Chiefs offensive tackle and the best tackle eligible receiver in NFL history. He's got the record. 4 of 4 touchdown catches, most by an offensive lineman of all time. Very cool. All right, hope you guys enjoyed this edition of the Chiefs Zone podcast. Appreciate all of you guys downloading, listening, watching live on Facebook and YouTube. Appreciate all of you guys. For those of you who tuned in live, please make sure you share the links, let a friend know about the podcast. Until then, I will talk to you tomorrow for the Red Friday live chat. Appreciate it. Take care.